Hello, I'm Dr. Matteson. I teach in the Technology Department at SUNY Oswego. Specifically, I teach engineering graphics and technical illustration, computer-aided design, and architectural drawing. This is the second of two presentations of doing some sketching skills or developing some sketching skills with my students. I developed them for my virtual learning classes. And the first presentation was on sketching different types of working drawings. This presentation is going to go over sketching different types of pictorial drawings. So if you'd like to watch this presentation, it's about 30 minutes, and it actually goes over sketching as you sketch along with me. So take a paper and pencil and enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, this is the second half of the video on types of technical drawings and illustrations. The first video was on working drawings. We did an orthographic, section, detail, auxiliary, and development sketch. Now we're going to look at doing some sketches for our presentation drawings. And just like I said, we're going to be thinking in 3 dimensions, trying to communicate our idea. This is often called rapid visualization or rapid viz, and we're going to actually do some quick sketches to communicate an idea using the formats of isometric, oblique, and 2 types of perspectives. So get your pencils ready. You'll need a couple of sheets of paper. We're going to start out with isometric drawing. Isometric drawing, or isometric views, start out usually with a horizontal line. And from that line, you're going to go 30 degrees. Now, you may not wonder what 30 degrees is, and if you look in your drafting kit, you have triangles, and one of those triangles is a 30-degree triangle. So you could pull out your 30-degree triangle just to make sure you're in the proximity of 30 degrees. I've done a lot of 3-dimensional isometric drawings, so I can pretty much guesstimate that pretty well. Okay, when we're drawing, we're going to use that same doghouse approach. We're going to try to lay out our proportions about the same for our doghouse. This will be the front. Notice there's a little ellipse here at the top of that doghouse door. And then we're going to come straight up from the center of that doghouse door, because that's going to be where the peak is. Don't be afraid to pause this video and give yourself a little more time for sketching if you need it along the way. Notice where I'm connecting. That makes the roof of your doghouse look correct. It always goes straight up the center line to the peak, right from the middle, equal sides. And then I brought the height of this line straight up at 30 so that these 2 heights are equal. And that gives you the correct perspective. So we'll just bring this back. This is going to be a parallel line. Put a little fascia board on this. Make it look a little nicer. And you can use a straight edge if you want to, but I do like you to start practicing some sketching skills. I think we said we had a skylight we were going to put in here. Again, parallel lines. Now, one thing that when we're doing these pictorials, these presentation drawings, it's okay to shade because you're trying to show surface textures. So if we wanted to show maybe some siding here, I think that's what we did. We put some siding. Again, feel free to pause the video if you feel more comfortable working with a straight edge. You can. Just adding, maybe you want to put your dog's name right here. Okay, so you have a little nameplate. And I think this is pretty good shape. I always like to darken in when I'm all done, I darken in some of my lines just to give it a little more emphasis, and I also do some shading to make it look like it is a solid. This is our isometric. We could play with this a little bit more, but I think that you want to always ask yourself when you're done quickly, if someone were to see this, would they be able to recognize what it is? And if you can look at your drawing and say, that's a doghouse with a skylight, you might say, well, that was a successful sketch. Okay, notice how I just kind of lifted that up a little bit. Okay, so you can show a little detail by adding a little bit of emphasis to this front edge and these two edges here. Kind of helps to set that up. Okay. So I would now call this one complete. This is your isometric sketch. We'll be doing lots of different isometric sketches here. That's just one to get started with. The next one we're going to do are obliques. Now remember, this isometric was 30 degrees. The front view was 30 degrees off plane, and the right side was 30 degrees off plane. When we do obliques or oblique drawings, the front view stays flat and the right side comes off at 45. Okay. Now, obliques come in different styles. We have cabinet obliques, cavalier obliques, and normal obliques, and it just basically depends on how far back you go to make this look well. So we're going to talk about that in another lesson. Today we're just going to draw a nice oblique that looks visually correct. So we're going to start out with just drawing a front view of our doghouse. And again, I like to just kind of put in a center line. That way the door kind of stays centered. Notice I'm using a lot of lines rather than just a single line. When you're sketching, it's better to sketch using sketch lines, which means you're going to use multiple lines rather than a single line. And it looks better for the naked eye to see the multiple lines. And let me just quickly explain. If I were to draw a circle, and I went like this, or if I went like this, and actually sketched it out, this looks easier for you to make it look more professional. So use a lot of lines rather than just a single line. This is a better looking sketch. Looks more three-dimensional. It's a better when you're done. So I'll just throw some siding on here like we had in our last one. And I think we even had a little sign over the door, right? Okay, so now, again, feel free to shut it off if you need to, the video, and sketch a little bit. If you feel more comfortable, use a straight edge. Basically here, after we get our front view sketched out, we're going to go 45 degrees. So your 45 degree triangle, I always just put it in myself, and then I check it. So I was in pretty good shape. Off the horizontal line, you want to have 45 degrees. And now we'll just go ahead and finish this up. This is always parallel, so this should go in the same direction. We'll just add that skylight, parallel lines. Three little straight lines kind of gives it the illusion of glass. Just giving a little thickness there for that. Roofing material. Finish up our siding. Show a little indentation here for the door. This is actually a half of a circle or an arc. Okay, it's not an ellipse. See the difference between this one here and this one. So in other words, the top of this door was an ellipse like that. See how it was a slanted circle? The top of this one is a circle, straight. So this is here. This one was this ellipse, cut in half. You see the difference? And you actually have an ellipse template that you'll be using for these when you do the isometrics. So you can see that once you line this up, we'll get something that's a little more proportional for the one I sketched here, maybe this one. So once you line this up, and these lines actually go with your 30 degrees, so that would go with 30. There you go, just to give you an idea. So you'll be using those. Let's get back to this. I think we're in pretty good shape for this particular oblique. Can emphasize that. Okay, so we can name our dog. Go ahead and put that in. You can show a little emphasis here on this edge to make that stand up a little bit. And I think this is pretty good. What I would suggest is stand back, kind of look at it and say to yourself, if I were to see, would someone recognize this? If I were to show it to them, would they say, oh, that's a doghouse? In this case, I think they would, and so I'm going to call this successful. Okay, notice they are both three-dimensional drawings. They both pretty much communicate. This one might be a little easier because you're not using ellipses. This is quite often used for kitchen layouts and cabinet drawings because you don't have to worry about doing ellipses for all the knobs and things. But isometrics look pretty nice too. Next sheet of paper. So you're going to take a nice fresh sheet of paper and we're going to talk about perspectives. We're going to do 2 of them. Okay, there's perspectives. If you remember in maybe elementary school or an art class, they talked about 1-point perspective and 2-point perspectives. They talked about 1-point perspectives, like if you were to look at a railroad track. These types of drawings are better for the visual. They give you a better visual for your eye, so better of the object because it actually shows how it would appear in nature. So just like that set of railroad tracks getting further and further and further away from you. Okay, so it gives you that perspective. This is a 1 point. Okay, the 2 point perspective uses 2. You'll see how that goes in a minute. I'm going to do our dog house. So let's start out with a 1 point perspective on our dog house. We start with a horizon line. Again, feel free to use your straight edge if you're more comfortable, or shut the video down and pause until you catch up. When we do our 1 point perspective, we start with our front view of our doghouse. And I would suggest putting it below the horizon line so it stays on the ground. If you draw it above the horizon line, it's going to look like it's flying, hurricane. So, tornado. So, we sketch the front view. Put the door in. So then we decide what our perspective wants to be, and this depends on how you're looking at it. So I would put my vanishing point here. You could put it anywhere on the horizon line, and I am going to use a straight edge here for this one. Just makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to pivot right on that vanishing point. And then I'll decide where I want that doghouse to proportionally be. Okay, it's always going to be foreshortened because remember, just like these railroad ties, they got closer together as they went away from me. So it gets foreshortened. They get closer together. So this ends up being, you don't measure this. You never measure this distance with a scale. Okay, so we'll just put this on. We have to do a parallel line, however. So whatever direction this is, slide it back. Parallel direction. Now you're probably going, oh, and what about that skylight? So we'll take the skylight. We'll put the front of the skylight in, and then we'll just project it back. Then you can see where the back of it goes. Again, it should be a little less on this side here, greater over here on this side. Then we'll decide the frame. Always try to keep that back side kind of narrow. Give it a little depth. Oh, we got to finish the sides. Siding. And then I darken in what I want to keep. This goes back to that vanishing point. Oh, forgot our little sign. This is our 1 point perspective. It looks more natural to the eye, and but they take longer to do. We're not going to be doing a lot of perspective drawing in here. It's more of an artistic mode of drawing, so we don't do a lot because it does take a little bit more time. And so what we do, though, we do have an option when we get into Inventor There is a perspective button that will actually give you a perspective view of your object. But as far as hand drawing, we're not going to do a lot of different perspective drawings. All right, so this is our doghouse. Just kind of visually seeing if there's, nope, can't see the back. Probably would draw a line showing the floor. See how the floor breaks? I probably would have had here something like that. And this one. So if we could look in, you could kind of see that there'd be a difference between the floor and the wall. Okay, we've got a 1-point perspective. Again, you don't want to put it way above the horizon line if you started out with your doghouse here, and I'll just do this real quick. You don't have to do it. But you could see what I would end up with is a flying doghouse. So we don't put it above unless we want that view. If you want the view looking at the bottom, remember we talked about an object that had a battery compartment at the bottom, or if they had some sort of detail you wanted to see from the bottom, this would be called a worm's eye view. So he's kind of looking up. It's above the horizon line. This is a bird's eye view. And these are both 1-point perspectives. The second one we're going to do is called a 2-point perspective. I'm going to put it back on the same sheet so you can see the difference. I'm going to start with the same horizon line. This is a horizon line. Then we're going to start, instead of drawing the front view like we did before, the trick to 2-point perspectives is you have to start with the edge of it. So in other words, I'm starting with this line right here. See that line? That's what that line's going to be. So you start with an edge, and then you find your vanishing points. Keep your vanishing points quite a ways away from each other. I'm going to call it VP1 and VP2. Okay. And then, and don't get too far away from the horizon line, else it will distort the object. So keep fairly close to the horizon line. We haven't got the roof on this yet. Okay, so this would be your doghouse front. There's going to be a little longer distance than there is here because it gets smaller as it goes back. And this is an ellipse. So the center line isn't really equal on both sides. Notice that it's larger here and shorter here. That's visually to make it look right. Then we'll just come up for the height of our roof. Play a little connect the dots. That's how you find out where that one belongs. I very seldom use the eraser. I rather just go in and darken in or shade rather than using a lot of erasing techniques. So it's okay. We'll just go ahead and lay this out for its width. Well, that's the width. We've got our depth. I'm going to go over to the top of the roof. Remember using our parallel line technique. So we take our parallel line. It's a little bit shorter. Remember, we have an overhang on that roof. And if we have we could mark out our siding on that front line that we started with, and then project those to the vanishing point. Take that same mark, project over to our other vanishing point. Notice I'm using my pencil to kind of hold down at the vanishing point and then just pivoting on that. And then I hold the straight edge down, transfer that line. Your illusion of your lap siding. We could put our center that on the door. Show the thickness of the door. That corner is probably, just to give you an idea, going to head this way. If you're trying to show the flooring in there, somewhere around that corner. And then again, just like we did before, ask yourself, if you look at it, this should be pretty visually accurate. So, but we're not going to do a lot of these. We still have to do our skylight. Okay, decide where your skylight's going to be. Parallel lines. Parallel lines, equal distance apart, parallel. Then our frame. Good. So this is your 2-point perspective. And we're going to call that one, and again, is that a worm's eye view or a bird's eye view? If it appears, for example, if I were a bird flying over, I'd be able to see the roof. That is a bird's eye view. It is placed below the horizon line. Okay, so we've, just to revisit, we've done our perspectives. We've done a nice little oblique, isometric, and that takes care of our presentation drawings.
I hope you enjoyed sketching along with pictorial drawings. This was the second of 2 presentations. The other was on working drawings. And I hope it was helpful to you, maybe not to just build your skills, but to give you an idea of something you could do with your students in this virtual or remote learning experience. Good luck to you, and thank you for attending.